What's the most fucked up thing someone has told you about themselves after barely getting to know them? She said that if I wanted she would kill her parents so we can live at her house. I never went on a second date with her. I was doing a service call at a house and just making small talk when the owner mentioned out of the blue that she's married to her uncle. I've been there twice, and both times they felt the need to tell me. It's kinda weird. I was a teenager working retail and there was a fidgety older woman I worked with. I was always very nice to her, but she was just a coworker at the end of the day. One day she told me about her grandpa molesting her when she was young. Her parents didn't believe her, so it continued until he died. She said she was glad he died and was happy at his funeral. I really had no clue what to say since this was out of nowhere. I just said I was really sorry it had happened. Felt really bad for her because I could tell it still really bothered her. This was a patient, middle-aged guy in short-term nursing home for a hip replacement or something. I'm trying to get to know him to figure out what kind of skills he may need to work on in order to return home safely. I ask him, "Do you cook?" He responds, "I used to, but then the cops found out." Lady at work started telling me about land she owned in another state that is not part of America. She then started talking about how every American is a bond to the government, and your SSN is just your bond number. Wealthy people own those bonds and own you. She started naming off prices of bonds based off people's races and genders. This was all said after I simply asked her what she was doing with her long weekend coming up. This happened to my wife. We had just moved into a new house and the lady next door came over to introduce herself to my wife. As she was talking, she informed my wife that her husband was mad at her because she had farted when he was going down on her. When I was around 10, I lived beside this weird family. The little girl was probably 4 or 5, always clinging to me anytime we were outside. She talked incessantly and always wanted to hang out with me, asking to come into my house. She annoyed me so badly, but she was really sweet and excited about everything. One day she tells me, "Do you ever naked wrestle with your dad?" I told her that's really weird and no, I don't even know what that means. She then tells me she and her dad and brother naked wrestle a lot. Forgive me, but I was 10. I had no idea what the fuck I was being told. I still think about that to this day. The guilt eats at me. I wish I had understood more and told someone. I also had a classmate in high school I'd give rides to and from school so she wouldn't have to make her dad do it. After we graduated, I saw her working at the mall. She then told me her dad used to molest her and she was finally able to see a therapist and work through it. When someone says these things happen more often than we realize, they're not wrong. I have had years and years of training on signs of this type of abuse and it will forever break my heart and make me so angry. It's unfathomable. Years ago I went on a date with a guy I met via AOL Personals. Within 5 minutes of the date, he told me he was working on a book about speed seduction. And he was so confident he could speed seduce me, he already had a condom on ready for me. I hightailed out of there full speed. I googled him a while back and turns out he ended up self-publishing the book. That he broke in and beat the shit out of a guy who raped his daughter, put the guy in the hospital, with a baseball bat. I totally get why he did it, but I have no idea why he thought it was a good story to tell a new co-worker. This guy I'd worked with for a couple days told me he had been meeting older men at a state park and having sex for money. We worked at an upscale deli. I had to stay late when I was a manager as one of the female employees' parents were running late. She broke down to me about how she had been sexually abused by her best friend's father and that he had been doing it to her best friend for years. He was in jail after he did it to her, as she reported him, and sadly the daughter hated her for turning in her father as she thought it was normal behavior. She has only been working there for a few weeks at this point and we had probably only worked together a handful of times, so I really didn't know her that well yet, but I think she just needed someone to know she was struggling with it and someone to tell her it wasn't her fault and what he did was wrong. I had a guy tell me that he and his cousin slept with the same person. Another guy telling me that when his cousin committed suicide, he wanted to drink himself to death. This was a first date. I also had some girl I went to middle school with randomly tell me over Facebook that she lost her virginity to her cousin. Dude got hired at my job and within the hour, not only was he saying massively homophobic and racist shit, he also told a story about how, at his second job the day before, his coworker got his hand caught in a machine. This dude absolutely delighted in telling us that. Not only did he openly laugh in his face while the dude sat there sobbing in pain with a missing hand, he also kept telling the guy that he was going to be in debt for the rest of his life because no one's going to pay for the accident, his wife is going to leave him, he was going to lose his job, etc. Basically whatever he could say to make this dude's awful day even worse, and he got glee out of it. The second he finished that story I told him to GTFO and never come back. I was MOD, because what the actual fuck. We were 17, first year of uni, and I had known the guy for a week or two tops, out of fucking nowhere. He tells me he had a kink for getting farted in the face by girls. I pissed myself laughing and we became good friends for a while. Yesterday I was walking with a friend of a friend after my friend left me. He started telling me benefits of nofap and his pervertness out of nowhere, like telling me how it had affected him and his life personally. He told me how he masturbated in a train sitting with all his friends in such a way nobody noticed. Then he goes on telling me how he asked his father for help, for which his father asked him to drink buttermilk because apparently it reduces the addiction. I sat next to this quiet kid in my Spanish class. He was awkward and had a subtle speech impediment. One day, I tried to spark conversation with him and he told me that he considered murdering his parents. First time meeting a lady while I was bartending. One drink in, she proceeds to tell me that her husband cheated on her, so she cheated on him with a young Jehovah's Witness that had showed up at her front door. She ended up getting knocked up by the Jehovah's Witness and now has a child out of wedlock. I literally never even got her name. Thanks for listening. Subscribe for more daily videos.